Welcome to the Backyard Bouquet Podcast, where stories bloom from local flower fields and home gardens. I'm your host, Jennifer Galizia of the Flowering Farmhouse. I'm a backyard gardener turned flower farmer located in Hood River, Oregon. Join us for heartfelt journeys shared by flower farmers and backyard gardeners. Each episode is like a vibrant garden, cultivating wisdom and joy through flowers. From growing your own backyard garden to supporting your local flower farmer, the Backyard Bouquet is your fertile ground for heartwarming tales and expert cut flower growing advice. All right, flower friends, grab your gardening gloves, garden snips, or your favorite vase because it's time to let your backyard bloom. Welcome back to the Backyard Bouquet Podcast. I'm Jennifer Galizia of the Flowering Farmhouse and your host of the Backyard Bouquet Podcast. I'm so excited to be kicking off season 2 with all of you. There's something truly magical about new beginnings, especially for us gardeners and flower farmers. We understand better than anyone that every new season brings fresh opportunities to grow and bloom in new ways. It's like that saying I love, a goal without a plan is just a wish. And as we start this new season, trust me, we're not just dreaming, we're planning to grow together. So before we dive into what's ahead for 2025, I wanted to take a moment to truly thank you. Yes, each one of you for being such an integral part of this incredible journey. When I launched this podcast, The Backyard Bouquet, in January of 2024, 1 year ago, I never imagined that we'd be creating such a vibrant community of flower growers and lovers. Through 44 full-length episodes and several bonus episodes in 2024, you've joined me in conversations with some of the most inspiring growers from around the world. From small backyard gardeners to established farms, each have shared their unique way of blooming where they've been planted. I thought it would be fun to take a walk down memory lane and recap some of the highlights from our most listened to episodes from season 1. Each of these conversations has taught me something special about where and how we bloom in this flower farming journey. And each of these episodes has perfectly set the stage for where we're heading in season 2 of the Backyard Bouquet Podcast. So let's count down the top 5 most listened to episodes of 2024. So coming in at number 5 was my conversation early in the year with Stephanie Bittner in episode 12. This conversation was all about creating a fragrant cut flower garden. And let me tell you, you guys truly loved learning more about how to incorporate fragrant flowers into your gardens. What I really loved about this episode was how Stephanie showed us that sustainable gardening isn't just about growing flowers. It's about creating complete ecosystems that bring joy year after year, both to our personal lives and to our gardens. Our 4th most downloaded episode was episode 8, a conversation with master gardener Stacy Ling, whose journey really embodies the saying, a goal without a plan is just a wish. She showed us how starting small, learning the basics, and growing intentionally can transform a beginner gardener into a published author and respected teacher, or even a master gardener. Our 3rd most downloaded episode was my dear friend Erin Simmons of Handpicked Homestead in Washington. This was episode number 6, so early on. And you guys, I was still figuring things out. Let me tell you, I had several of you reach out to me after this episode telling me I needed to get a podcast editor because I was still learning how to edit these episodes. But you know what? You still downloaded this episode because Erin's advice was so amazing. Erin showed us what's possible when you align your garden plans with your life's priorities. Her story of intentionally scaling her flower farm back to fit her family life on 1/6 of an acre really resonated with those of you who are seeking balance in your own growing journey. Our 2nd most downloaded episode came later in the year, and that was episode 37 with Katie King from Hidden Springs Flowers. Katie's wisdom about transforming a century-old family farm into a modern cut flower farm and business while staying true to her values struck a chord with so many of you. It did for me as well. I'll never forget when she said, "You don't make your life fit the farm, you make the farm fit your life." And oh, how true is that? She showed us how to honor our roots while growing towards our dreams. And of course, coming in at number one, as no surprise to many of you, our most listened to and loved episode that I heard from so many of you was my conversation with Erin Benzicain of Floret, and that was episode number 35. And in this episode, we talked about how seeds hold the past, present, and future. And it's so fitting that this was our top episode because in many ways, this episode captures exactly what we're all about: the power of small beginnings, the importance of patience, and how our growing choices today shape tomorrow's gardens. So as we continue on, I want to share a little story from my own life this last year and the power of clearing out the weeds. Each January, we always talk about new beginnings. And speaking of new beginnings, I want to share something very personal with you. 2024 taught me a very powerful lesson about growth, one that came in an unexpected way. Many of you know that at the end of 2023, we lost our main growing space, and I literally had to tear down our farm. Looking back now, I can honestly share that I was absolutely devastated and crushed at the time. I felt like my world was crashing down. Every perennial that we dug, every row that we dismantled, it became part of a bigger lesson about clearing what no longer serves us. I didn't realize it at the time, but I learned this last year that life only makes sense when we look backwards. And you know, as flower farmers, we understand the importance of clearing weeds to make room for what we want to grow. But this past year, I lived that lesson in a whole new way. We weren't just clearing physical weeds. We were clearing everything that wasn't aligned with our true vision and values as a farm and also as a family. And here's the beautiful thing I learned about clearing out the weeds. When you remove what's no longer serving you, you create space for clarity. It took me a while to get clarity last year. But you know what really gave me clarity was talking to so many of you. I created this podcast as a lifeline. When I was losing our main growing space, I was afraid that I wasn't going to have anywhere to grow for a while. And I thought the best way to stay connected to this community, to the flower world, was to create a podcast so I could speak to so many of you. And let me tell you, you have given me so much clarity, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of the conversations I have had on this podcast, and I can't wait for those that are coming in 2025. Now, as I stand on our forever farm on D Highway in Hood River, and the reason I tell you where it is because we are on what's called the Hood River Fruit Loop. So for those of you that live in the Pacific Northwest, I hope you'll make plans in the future to come see us when we open our farm to the public. And right now, it is just bare land, but it is so full of possibility. It's a blank canvas, and it's allowing us to build and design exactly what brings our farm and our family joy. For me, I've realized that joy comes from growing dahlias, creating community, and sharing this passion with others. When I got really clear about what lights me up, the path forward for us became so much brighter. For me, it's not just about growing flowers anymore. It's about growing the right flowers in the right way and for the right reasons. This experience got me thinking about how this applies to all of us. Whether we're growing flowers professionally or tending a small cutting garden, I always encourage you to think to yourself, and these are the questions that I had to ask myself this last year. And this is so relevant, especially as we are in January. Many of us are planning and dreaming about what the year ahead is going to look like. So I challenge you to ask yourself these questions. What in your garden or in your life isn't serving you anymore? And maybe that answer is a variety of things. Maybe it's more of a headache for you to grow a certain flower, or you're no longer getting joy out of doing a certain task on the farm, or perhaps you're spreading yourself too thin and trying to grow everything. I know I've been there. The beauty of flower farming is that every season gives us a chance to start fresh. And I've been reminded of that many times by speaking with so many of you on this podcast. Just like in our gardens, we get to choose what we plant in our lives. What will you choose to grow in 2025? What can you grow that will bring you true joy? What tasks bring you true joy? These are questions that I love to reflect on this time of year. I also like to switch that question around and ask myself, what did I not enjoy doing? What did I not enjoy growing? So that I can get that clarity of what do I really need to make my farm successful, my family, my personal life. It's all so tied together as farmers. It's truly hard to separate farming from our personal life. And it can also be hard to just get started, especially when you're clearing out those heavy weeds that have been there for a long time. But sometimes I want to encourage you that the most beautiful blooms come from having the courage to just clear the space first. Sometimes all it takes is taking that first step and making one small little change, or making one small addition, or growing one new thing. And so that leads me to coming into season number 2 of the Backyard Bouquet podcast. And I couldn't be more excited to be kicking off 2025 with another season of the Backyard Bouquet podcast. I'm going to do my best to be consistent and have a new episode out every week. But I'll be honest with you, it's just me. I don't have an editing team. I'm on the hunt for a virtual assistant. I've been so busy. I haven't even really had the time to focus on that yet, but those are priorities this year of growing out a team so that I can have more time to focus on this podcast. But I can tell you, I have an amazing lineup of guests for the first half of this year, and we're still working on more episodes. But as a farmer, there's times and certain weeks where, as a farmer and a mom, I just don't get an episode out, and I apologize in advance, but I hope that you will hang in there and look forward to the new episodes as they do come out. So without further ado, as I am working towards many great episodes this season, I wanted to share a common theme. And this theme I have come up with for this year is where we bloom. As I was thinking about this journey, especially mine this last year, of finding clarity through clearing out the weeds, I realized that it's actually the perfect timing as we launch into season 2 of the Backyard Bouquet podcast. This year on the podcast, we're exploring something really special, the concept of where we bloom. And I'm thrilled to tell you that we're taking this conversation global in ways that I have never imagined possible. So stay tuned. We'll be hearing from flower farmers across continents, from flower farms in New Zealand and Australia to passionate farmers right here in North America. Each of these farmers and gardeners have their own unique story of where and how they bloom. Because here's what I've learned. Whether you're growing flowers beside me in Hood River, Oregon, or halfway across the world, we all face similar choices about what we grow and why we grow them. These upcoming episodes aren't just going to be garden stories, though trust me, we'll talk plenty about flowers. These are also inspiring and heartwarming stories about the following topics, including finding what brings us joy in the garden and life, the practical lessons we learn along the way, the community we build through flowers, and yes, even the challenging seasons that help us grow. Because when we share these things, we lift one another up. And I think as farmers, we know we are more powerful as a community than trying to do this alone. I'm also especially excited to share conversations with growers who have found their own unique way to bloom where they've been planted. Each grower has their own way of choosing joy in their garden, whether that's specializing in a particular flower variety, creating sustainable growing practices, or finding innovative ways to serve their communities. And of course, I also want to hear from you. I want to know, who would you like to hear from on the podcast this year? What growing challenges are you facing that you would like to hear others tackle? Anything that you specifically are struggling with this year or want to learn more about, please share those ideas with me. I love hearing from you as the listeners because you are what makes this podcast so special. So before we wrap up this special episode, I want to acknowledge something really important, and that is that this podcast truly only grows because of you. When I think about the community we've built in just 1 year, I'm truly amazed. Through 44 episodes and several bonus conversations, you've been here growing and learning alongside me all the way. And I have to tell you, I don't believe I would be where I'm at today. I not sure that we would have found our 20-acre farm had it not been from the amazing conversations I had with so many growers from around the world who have inspired me with their incredible growing ideas, ways of running their business, and just being the incredible, inspiring growers that they are. I have built so many friendships through this podcast, and I hope that you feel more connected to other growers around the world as well. I do want to mention that every time you take a moment to leave a review of this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, you help me as well as other flower lovers find our community. When you share an episode with a friend or family member who might need its message, you're helping to not just spread the knowledge about flowers, but the joy they bring to our lives. If any of these podcast conversations from the Backyard Bouquet resonate with you, I would be so grateful if you could help me with any of the following. You can share your favorite podcast episode with someone who might need its message. You can leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. You can reach out to me on social media at either the Flowering Farmhouse or the Backyard Bouquet Podcast and let me know what you're planning to grow this year. And also, please tell me, who would you love to hear from in season 2? I've got a great lineup already, but I still have about half the year to fill with interviews. I love hearing from you and knowing that these episodes are making a positive impact in your life and your gardens. I hope you will remember that just like our gardens, this community grows stronger when we nurture it together. Your stories and experiences enrich our whole growing community. So as I close out this short intro to our season 2 of the Backyard Bouquet, I want to remind you that as we are stepping into 2025, I want to leave you with this parting thought. Every year in the garden is a fresh start. It's a chance to choose what we grow, what we nurture, and what brings us joy. So whether you're currently standing on muddy, bare land like me, or you're planning and dreaming about your first cutting garden, or maybe reimagining an established space that you already have, you get to decide where and how you'll bloom this year. I hope you'll remember a goal without a plan is just a wish. But the great thing is that right now, in this moment, you get to decide where and how you're going to bloom this year. For me, that means I'm focusing on growing more dahlias, creating a community, both here on the podcast and my online community, the Dahlia Patch. And I'm going to be sharing this journey of transforming barren land on our new land with all of you. And I'd love to know, how are you planning to bloom this year? What do you have in store? What exciting things are you excited to grow? Or what new opportunities, or what are you struggling with this year? And speaking of sharing our journey, I have some exciting news if you haven't already heard. We're capturing the entire transformation of our new farm on film. From breaking ground to first blooms, we're documenting every step of creating our forever farm. It's one thing to tell you about growing joy, but soon you're going to be able to see this blank canvas transform into a flourishing flower farm. Or at least that's the plan. I can't wait to share more about this project with you as it unfolds, and I hope you'll continue to follow along on our journey as we start to restore our new land. We're already putting down silage tarps, and we have 1,200 trees and woody perennials coming this spring. So it's going to be a busy spring, and I can't wait to share the process with all of you. If you have any recommendations for regenerative farmers that would be great on this podcast, I'd love to bring them on, as we are truly focusing on being a regenerative cut flower farm on this new land and healing the soil, because right now we are working with bare dirt. Anyways, I can't wait to share more stories of where we bloom in season 2, both from our farm and from flower growers around the world. Until next time, I hope that you'll keep growing and blooming wherever you are planted. Thank you, flower friends, for joining us on another episode of the Backyard Bouquet. I hope you've enjoyed the inspiring stories and valuable gardening insights we've shared today. Whether you're cultivating your own backyard blooms or supporting your local flower farmer, you're contributing to the local flower movement, and we're so happy to have you growing with us. If you'd like to stay connected and continue this blossoming journey with local flowers, don't forget to subscribe to the Backyard Bouquet Podcast. I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave us a review of this episode. And finally, please share this episode with your garden friends. Until next time, keep growing, keep blooming, and remember that every bouquet starts right here in the backyard.